So now we're going to look at pricing methods. So let me go ahead and get that up for us. So section 6.5 is calculate the selling price using a market-based pricing. We'll also look at cost plus pricing as well, and then we'll calculate the maximum allowable price cost using the target costing method. So we know that establishing a sales price for products and services is going to be one of the most important managerial decisions in any business. Choosing a pricing strategy has a critical impact on profitability and ultimately on the ongoing success of any business. And we know that before establishing a selling price, then we know that businesses, they need to understand the market for their products. They need to think about if there are identical or similar products that are going to be available to potential customers from other companies. What is the demand for the product? How much are customers willing to spend on the product? A common situation is a business sells a product that is similar to products that other companies are already selling, but that doesn't have any, or excuse me, but the product has specific features that are going to make it stand out. So these businesses have to establish their own selling price for their product. And so we'll look at an example of Jordan, who's a recent college graduate, and he wants to start a business where he is going to sell embroidered baseball caps. And he decides to create an online store called Jordan's Baseball Caps. And Jordan's raw materials are going to be the plain baseball caps. He will perform the embroidery design, create the design, and then do the stitching process in-house. And so he will have to purchase the necessary equipment and also hire his friends to help him. Jordan has to complete his business plan in order to apply for a small startup loan, which would be his only source of financing. So he needs to determine the price that his target customer is going to be willing to pay. And if the price is set too high, then there would be fewer interested customers. But if he sets the price too low, then the company's costs and the required return might not be covered. And so we'll look at three different pricing methods that he could use. He could use market-based pricing, what's called cost plus pricing, as well as target costing. So first we'll look at market-based pricing. So generally, customers' willingness to buy a product is going to depend upon its price. If the price of an item is lower, then customers' demand is going to be greater. If the price is higher, then customers are going to demand fewer items. This principle is the foundation of the law of demand in economics. And I know some of you I have in both managerial accounting as well as in micro. So we've talked already a little bit about the supply of demand. And so we see that, how that works. And this is exactly where this comes into play. So market-based pricing is going to be when a company can accurately forecast the volume of items sold at any particular price, then it would be able to set a price that will provide it with the highest income from operations possible. And so if a company has determined that the cost of their product is going to be $1 a unit, it determines that the number of purchasers at each selling price, and it calculates their total profit. Assuming the forecast of the number of purchases at each price is accurate, in this example here, the company would want to set the selling price at $4 in order to maximize the profit. So we see that how that works out, what the profit would be on each unit, the number of purchasers, and then what the profit would be. So going back to our scenario with Jordan and the baseball caps, Jordan has calculated that the variable costs per baseball cap are going to be $9, and that the fixed cost for the year is going to be $9,000. So he has estimated that the quantity demanded at the various selling prices in the table below, and it's also in your book on page 209, it shows the basic values for a contribution margin income statement for a 1-year period. Notice that the highest selling price on the table does not generate the highest income from operations. In fact, the highest price would cause an operating loss, or actually the highest two prices listed there would cause an operating loss. And so the highest income from operations would be generated at a selling price of $20. Now, the challenge with using market-based pricing is going to determine the accurate relationship between the price and the quantity that's going to be demanded. And there are a number of ways in order that we can calculate the data. One way is that we could utilize social media to ask people how much they would be willing to pay for one of his caps, count how many people would pay which price, and then apply those results to estimate the relationship between price, um, demand for his entire market. Obviously, that's going to be difficult because, again, if he's on social media, more than likely he's only talking to his friends or just a very limited subset of people. So it's not necessarily reaching out to all customers that are going to see. It's only going to be limited to his sphere of influence. Now, Jordan could also try selling the baseball caps at various prices in order to determine the demand, and then he could apply those and extrapolate those results in order to estimate the relationship between the price and the demand for the entire market. Now, an easier method would be to set the selling price. What it would be is to use cost plus pricing or target costing method. So we'll look at cost plus pricing. So cost plus pricing, what that does is that applies a markup to cost in order to determine the selling price of a product or service. And a lot of businesses, this is what they will use. They will just decide, okay, we're going to mark up the cost by a certain set percentage, and that's what they're going to use. And so the markup is going to be the difference between the product selling price and its cost, often expressed as a percentage of cost and calculated as the cost multiplied by 1 plus the market percentage. We do that 1 plus and the market percentage in order to get it to add that percentage to what the cost is. Because otherwise, you're just figuring out how much that markup is going to be, and you'd have to add the cost back to it. So doing it that way, it comes out right. So we see that if a company's markup was 30% and the product was to cost $100, how we would do that. So we see that it would be 100 times and then 1 plus 30%. So we're going to do that. Remember, we're going to do the part that's in parentheses first. So 1 plus 0.30 is 30%. So 100 times 1.30 is going to be 130. So the markup is $30 basically. And the other way you could do it is just to take, like what I said, you could take the cost times the percentage. That gets you how much the markup is, and then just add the original cost back to it. So either way, you can think about it in either way is correct, but they're just showing you there algebraically how to do it. Now, since the formula for cost plus pricing is going to require two inputs, it's going to require the cost of whatever it is plus the markup percentage. The key question for a company is going to be at what cost amount should they use and what markup percentage is going to be appropriate. So to successfully implement cost plus pricing, we would want to use the full or the absorption cost in order to produce the product is most often used. This includes the variable product costs, which are the direct materials, direct labor, and variable manufacturing overhead, as well as our fixed manufacturing overhead. And then once the full cost is determined, then we can add the markup to it, to the cost to provide the company with a selling price. And Jordan, he's going to use this. And so we see that he has estimated that he would be able to manufacture and sell 1,000 of the baseball caps during the year. And so he's been prepared this breakdown of estimated costs of manufacturing and selling the baseball caps. So $4 a unit for direct materials, $3 for labor, $2 for variable manufacturing overhead, and then $6,000 for the fixed manufacturing overhead, which might be the cost of the machine or the cost of the facility that he's in. the rent, and then also 3,000 for selling and administrative costs. And so but we're only interested in the actual product cost. So it would be the variable expenses. So the direct materials, direct labor, variable manufacturing overhead, and then our fixed manufacturing overhead. And so we could use this information to get the full cost of the baseball cap. So that's going to be the 4, the 3, and the 2. And then we're going to add that up plus the 6,000 divided by 1,000 units. That gets us $15. So now the components of the product cost and the markup percentage for cost plus are shown here. Now, notice that selling and administrative expenses, we are not going to use those because that's a period cost. So we're only looking at the product cost, like we said. Now, the markup has to cover the selling and administrative costs in addition to the desired level of profit. So we need to determine how much that markup percentage is very carefully. So, because it has to cover what desired profit he wants to make as well as any other cost besides the product cost that we need to cover. So many companies were going to use a markup percentage that is considered a standard in the industry or one that is determined by professional judgment. So sometimes certain industries will have certain percentages and you'll just stick to that, or you'll have to use your own best professional judgment to determine that. Other companies will have a formula that they might use in order to determine the markup percentage, and we want to make sure that it covers the selling and administrative expenses, that it provides a significant rate of return that they want, as well as provides for the cost of the product. So formula that we might use is the return on investment multiplied by the investment that we put forth, and then add in our selling and administrative expenses, and then divide that over the selling volume multiplied by the product cost. And so if we plug all of these variables in to Jordan's scenario that we've been discussing, Jordan, he's going to take out a bank loan of 13,500 in order to cover the startup cost for the business, which is going to be his investment to buy the machine, to provide for where his place is going to be, so on and so forth. He also would like to make a 20% return on his investment in order to cover for the cost of the loan as well as to cover his living expenses. And so the product cost we said was 15. And if we plug all of that in, we get that the markup percentage that we should be using is 38%. And so Jordan's calculated the markup percentage is 38%. And so after doing that, after marking up the full cost of $15 per unit by 38%, the selling price is going to be determined to be $20.70. The full cost selling price calculation is summarized here. So again, we have the direct materials, the direct labor, variable manufacturing overhead or fixed manufacturing overhead. That's how we arrive at 15. And then the markup is $5.70 is 38% of 15. So we get that the selling price should be $20.70. Now, what we can do then with that is we can prepare a contribution margin income statement based upon the forecast quantity of 1,000 units, the selling price of $20.70, and the estimated costs. And so the forecasted income from operations or profit is going to be $2,700. Income from operations is 20% of the initial investment. So be 2,700 divided by 15,500. The product is priced properly in order to generate a profit and the desired return that we're looking for. Jordan can also use his statement to perform a break-even analysis in order to determine how many caps he would have to sell in order to break even, which gives us a good idea there. Now, some of the advantages of using cost plus pricing is that a business can ensure that it covers the product cost and earns a profit. A disadvantage is that cost plus pricing does not take market or customer information into consideration. And so For example, if through social media, Jordan learned that his target customers appreciate the styles and the designs that are featured in his line. Generally speaking, by adding unique features to products that customers enjoy, businesses can set a premium price. And so it could be that he could actually charge closer to $25 per cap. His lower price of $20.70, it could suggest a poorer quality. And so it's possible that potential customers will not view his caps as a premium product or even comparable to other products in the market because of his price. So you can use this as kind of a starting point and then kind of see if the market can bear more. And he found out, well, maybe he could finds out maybe he could sell it for more. So now target costing. This is another method. It kind of works in the reverse because this is figuring out how much you can spend in order on your product because you already then know how much you're building it to up to a certain price. So we see kind of how that is. So it just kind of works in the reverse of what uh, we looked at before with the cost plus. So we see that target costing is the process of using the anticipated market price to calculate the maximum costs the business can incur. And the target cost would be the maximum allowable cost. And in target costing, manufacturing and other costs cannot exceed the target cost. The target cost is determined by the formula, which is the predetermined selling price minus the desired profit, gives us the target cost. And so this target cost formula illustration shows the relationship between the target cost and the desired profit and what the price is. So the price is going to be the target cost plus our desired profit. Target costing is often going to be used when a company believes that it has little or no control over the selling price based on supply and demand. So if the market indicates that there is a range of selling prices, then the company would have to select a selling price from this range to sell to customers in this market. Now, another reason some companies use target costing is that they believe that a significant portion of the product cost occurs in the design and development phase of the value chain. Remember, we looked at that, the different processes that a product goes through from conceptualization all the way through to being developed, all the way then into being manufactured and being sold. So the product is designed, developed, and to be produced with the maximum allowable cost in mind and not exceeded. And this happens quite often. Different products, they will be designed down to the cost. So they already know how much they want to charge for it at the beginning. And so they're trying to, work to figure out, okay, how do we do that? Effective implementation of target costing requires a strong understanding of the things that the customer truly values, but it encourages the company to avoid spending on activities that would add minimum value on the customer's perspective. So it can help to focus the company if it's done right and done thoughtfully. And so again, here an example with Jordan. So similar baseball cap designers we see are charging $25 per unit. Jordan believes that his caps can compete, so he sets his selling price at $25. So then we want to know, okay, how much then can he spend on it? So remember that we said that Jordan, he projects that he would sell 1,000 baseball caps for the coming year, that he has to have an investment of 13,500 in order to design, to develop, and to produce the caps, and he wants at least a 20% return on his investment. So the target cost would be calculated as we see here on the screen. And so since the target cost is 22,300 and the total costs are 18,000, he can easily meet the desired profit of 2,700 by selling at the $25 selling price. He could spend up to 4,300 more on advertising in order to try to increase the demand without losing his desired profit. So we have the estimated selling price, we minus the 20% profit. That gives us the target cost. And so we have our absorption cost, per unit, and then we add our selling administrative. So we have then our total cost is 18. So his target cost is 22.3, but his actual total costs are going to be 18. So he's doing really well there. So an advantage of target costing is that it is a proactive approach to managing costs. It requires companies to be aware of what their costs are and to know how flexible they can be in responding to market demand. And it helps companies to minimize the cost of activities that are not going to add value for the customer. It also forces customers to be aware of market demand, and companies avoid having to determine selling price since the market is what is setting the price. But a disadvantage is that it could reduce the quality of the product since management is being pressured to not exceed the maximum allowable cost. And this can lead to the use of cheaper components in the production process, which this reduces the product's overall quality. Implementing target costing also requires very detailed cost data. So, like cost plus pricing, target costing is a guide for setting prices, although they approach pricing from different perspectives. Both methods emphasize understanding that costs are important. And so, how would we choose the correct pricing method? So, establishing a sales price, as we stated before, is going to be one of the most important strategic decisions that you would make, management decisions you would make. So, each pricing method produces a different price per unit. So, the method chosen is going to depend upon the characteristics of the market and the resulting price sensitivity of customers. And so, for this example, we'll look at mobile phones and convenience stores. This really is kind of a weird example, but we'll kind of go with it. We'll try to go with it. So we see this figure below, and it shows us the extremes of the market with pure competition to the top and a pure monopoly at the bottom. And so if you think about, somebody that a business, they're just selling a basic flip phone, and those are going to be widely available, maybe, at a convenience store. Someone needs a phone. They're going to go in there, just get them a prepaid phone, flip phone. They just need a phone. They don't care about all these other crazy things that it can do. So then target costing would be good. They're just, you're looking at it, you're saying, okay, I have to make this much money. It's going to cost this much to produce, and you can work that out. Now, for a mid-range phone, kind of maybe more of an Android type phone, that's one where you're going to look at market-based pricing, and maybe they're available at a convenience store on the nicer portion of town, so to speak, on the other side of the track, so to speak. And then and again, we see there how somebody their phone just broke. They need a phone to make calls and texts. They don't care, about all the features. They're more desperate. They're very highly sensitive to price. And as we see, more mid-level, they're not as sensitive. And then they really very low, they don't care. And so somebody that's looking for unique features of the phone. They're really into photography. They want to be able to do everything, a lot of their, mobile things on that instead of having to use their computer or their tablet to do it. So they're looking at maybe more the top of the line, greatest iPhone. And so there's only certain stores that carry it. You're not going to be able to get one at a 7-Eleven or somewhere at Walmart. You're going to have to go, to an Apple store, or you're going to have to go somewhere where to the carrier. And so it's a little bit more, more limited availability. And so the cost plus pricing is one way the best way maybe that we could go. And so we see at the bottom of the table, demand's going to be high. So sellers, they're in a strong position to be price setters. If you think about that, when Apple comes out with that new iPhone, there's people that just jump on it. They don't care. They're going to spend it. If it's $1,000, they don't care. They're going to spend $1,000. They want to get that new phone. They don't care. So demand, they know Apple knows demand's going to be high for that, as an example. And so they have a monopolistic position because they're the only ones that make the Apple iPhone and that have those features and that functionality. And so they're able to set the price however they want. They can and they will use cost plus pricing in order to achieve their desired profit levels. And so we know that the iPhone, it has unique features, it has strong brand, really good camera, really good, everything else with it. And it's leading to a group of very loyal customers. They're going to purchase that newest model as soon as it comes out. I mean, we see that with pretty much all the things that Apple makes, with the phones, with the new laptops that they come out with. People buy them right away. They're not gonna wait for it. Now, the only convenience store in the middle of the desert knows customers are going to stock up on drinks, and they know they're willing to pay a premium for them. I don't know if I mentioned it in this class or not, but when we're traveling, up here to the Bay for medical appointments and things, there's a place called Casa de Fruta, and it's along Pacheco Pass. You get to a certain point once you get on Pacheco Pass, you're on there for 45 minutes, an hour or so. There's nothing between what Santanella, Gustine, the only thing, and Gilroy. The only thing is Casa de Fruta. And so they know, the people that own Casa de Fruta, they know if you want gas, you need gas. They're the only place that you're able to get it. You're gonna pay that high Chevron price. They don't care, you know. And the same thing with the drinks. If you go in there for the drinks or you want a meal, they have the restaurant. People will pay for that. And of course, it's the only place too where there's the bathroom, everything. So you're in the desert or you're somewhere like that where you're on the road and there's no other place. If you don't stop, you're not going to get it for, a while. Your people are going to pay a premium for that. And then at the top of the table, we saw that there are sellers that are at a weak competitive position. They're price takers. They're very sensitive to price. And so maybe they're people, they're low income. They really need a phone because they're trying to get a job. They're trying to stay connected with their family, so on and so forth. But they don't have enough. They're not able to get an iPhone. They just need a phone to stay in contact, in the example that we're looking at here from our book. So customers, they have to set prices that are being dictated more by the market. Since they have little control over pricing, they would use target costing in order to determine. Old-fashioned flip phones have been around for years, so demand will not be high and the price must be low to attract customers. And they're not that popular anymore, but if you're trying to market them, they have to be cheap because people are not going to probably want to pay more than maybe 100, 120 for one. Even that, people aren't going to want to pay that. Um, so if a convenience store has three other competing stores within sight, the customers are going to be very sensitive to price because they're going to go to which one they think is the cheapest. And you think about that, even like for gas stations, there'll be one right across from the other, and they have the price there. So, you're going to go to whichever one is the cheapest usually. Now, most businesses we see they're going to be between these two extremes. And so that makes market pricing the best choice for them to maximize profits. And as Jordan found in our original example, the challenge of using market-based pricing is going to be determining that accurate relationship between the price and determining the quantity that's going to be demanded. So by knowing the prices that are generated by cost plus pricing and target costing, Jordan, he can check the reasonableness of his market-based pricing results, and he can make decisions that would help to uh, deal with profitability. Now, once the price is established using the suitable pricing method, then Jordan can test his business model by determining the cost, performing what's called a cost volume profit analysis, which we've looked at, I think, in a previous chapter. And he could use a break-even point in order to determine the cost volume profit of ball caps that he has to sell in order to determine that, in order to reach his level of profit. So, which of the following statements is going to be true about market-based pricing? Is it that a company must be able to accurately forecast the volume of items that are going to be sold at any particular price in order to select the price that maximizes income from operations? Is it that the challenge of determining the accurate relationship between the price and the quantity demanded? Is it that the highest selling price does not always generate the highest income from operations, or all of those are correct? So all three of those, A, B, and C, all three of those statements are true. And then again, what is going to be the equation that we're going to use in order to calculate the markup percentage and cost plus? It's going to be the required rate of return multiplied by the investment. And then to that, we're going to add the selling and administrative expenses. And we're going to divide that into our sales volume multiplied by our unit product cost. And then which of these statements are true about target costing? Is it that an advantage of target costing is that it is a proactive approach to managing costs? Target costing is calculated as a predetermined selling price plus the desired profit. And an advantage of target costing is that it can improve the quality of products. All the statements are true. And it is A, that the advantage of target costing is that it is a proactive approach to managing costs. It is not B, and it could actually lower the quality of products. Now, which of the following statements about price takers is true? Are they in a strong competitive position so they don't use cost plus pricing or they would use cost plus pricing to set the prices? Is it that customers of price takers are not sensitive to price, or price takers have little control over price, so they'll use target costing to set prices? And it is C, that price takers have little control over pricing, so they would use target costing. All right, so next we'll look at some ethical considerations dealing with costing and pricing.